In today's Diablo 4 video, we're going to talk about a few tips that will save you countless hours, whether you're leveling up your main, trying to get as many legendaries as possible, or if you're just looking to get an alt character up and running. There are a few tools and things to know in here that will make that a lot more efficient. Before we jump in with the video, a quick word from today's sponsor. King Arthur Legends Rise is an upcoming turn-based squad RPG made by KhrazeGaming, the same creators behind other popular titles such as Marvel Contest of Champions and Disney Mirrorverse. The game's open beta will start really soon on June 29, so totally check the links below to pre-register in advance. Plus, it supports cross-platform play, which means you can hop in at any time either on your mobile phone or on PC. But Legends Rise lets you play in an epic dark fantasy world, rule your own kingdom, and battle with a party of heroes at your side, including knights, mages, warriors, and more. As you progress through this highly interactive world, you'll engage in an immersive dark fantasy narrative with stunning visuals and many challenges. The game offers an array of mythical monsters to fight in dungeon-style boss battles, which will test out your skills in satisfying turn-based combat. So totally check King Arthur Legends Rise using my links in description, make sure to wishlist on Steam and also pre-register on the website to play the open beta starting June 29. So big thanks to the team for the sponsorship once more, and now back to the video. Now, one of the things I want to get out of the way is maximizing the loot during Hell Tides, because if you were like me and ran like a headless chicken trying to open up as many of the random tortured boxes, well, you were seriously missing out on a ton of loot. Instead, I want you to focus exclusively on these instead, the ones called Tortured Gifts of Mysteries. These cost 175 Cinders, which is more than any other similar treasure, but they guarantee at least 3 legendaries, and from my personal experience, they tend to drop all the way up to 5 from one single chest. Plus, there's a way to get at least 4 per Helltide, since they have a very specific spawn timer that you can play around with and get them more often. So in order to avoid ever having to torment yourself trying to figure this stuff up, here is a map I've been using personally, and I found this to be very reliable in terms of where these spawn locations are. The community actually came together and put this all up. I believe there's also an update to the Reddit thread about it, so I'll post both of these links below to the people who put all of this together. I definitely suggest bookmarking these and using them whenever there's a new Helltide event that spawns, which by the way happens around every 2.5 hours, give or take. Another important thing to note about these is that even though there are 4 or 5, depending on the zone, possible spawn points for these mysterious treasures, only about 2 or a maximum of 3 will spawn per any given Helltide. This means that you can totally run into a known spot, for example, and the chest not to be there because it spawns somewhere else within its possible spawn points. So in this situation, you will want to go ahead and find the other ones in the hopes that they will be there. However, there is a trick to open 4, 5, or even 6 during the same Helltide instead of only the possible 2 or maximum 3. And that is because these boxes have a respawn timer. Basically, they respawn at the end of every hour change as long as the Helltide event is still underway. So once the hour changes and the timer hits the 60-minute mark, the existing 2 or 3 caches will actually despawn no matter if you open them or not, and the game cycles to 2 or 3 new ones in their place, also in those possible spawn locations within the region. So let me give you an example with this one I ran right here. We know Helltides last for 1 hour, and this one started at about 12:30 p.m. in my region. So what I did in this case is I immediately rushed the Cinders and grabbed the caches before the hour changed, as in before the timer hit 1 o'clock for this specific event. In this case, I did all of this at around the 53-minute mark. But then once the clock hit the next hour, so in this case 1 p.m., by the 8th minute mark I already went to the new chests that were also completely refreshed because they already got respawned once the clock hit the next hour. This can only be done as long as the Helltide doesn't start exactly at the start of the hour, since it itself only lasts 60 minutes. So as long as it starts at, let's say, 15 minutes past the hour, or 30 minutes, or 45 minutes before the next hour, it can be done in this way to basically get the first batch, wait for the reset, and then grab the second batch of Helltide Mysterious Caches so that you can get these legendaries. This means that you can essentially double the amount of Mysterious Caches, so in theory you can go all the way up to at least 4, maybe even up to 6 caches depending on your luck, and get at least 3 up to 5 legendaries for each one of them. Now obviously the next tip is that you'll want Cinders and you'll need them fast, and doing events inside of the Helltides is by far the fastest route, especially if you pay close attention to this map right here, because this is going to show you the events, the open world ones that can spawn inside of the Helltides depending on each zone. And usually they are just one quick horse ride away from one another, and the best part is that they also tend to respawn much faster when a Helltide is underway. So you can literally go ahead to one, finish it, move on to the next, and by the time you're done with the second one, the first one already respawns, so you can just bounce between just 2 of these back to back and get a lot more of these Cinders than you would otherwise by defeating normal enemies. Of course, on top of this, I also suggest playing with groups of other people so that you can get a lot higher level monsters and also get them to spawn a lot more Cinders. I'm going to post these all down below in the description, but obviously you're going to want to make this as efficient as possible, so also pay attention to any interactable objects like the deposits, because oftentimes they can drop up to like 5 Cinders in an instant, and there's tons of them all around the Helltides. Lastly, also don't forget about the roaming level 75 boss during these Helltides that you might have seen actually running very fast. Not sure I have any footage of it, but I defeated it on a number of occasions, and actually it seems to drop a lot of Cinders as well as some extra loot, usually about on the same level as most of the world events happening inside of these Helltides, so it can help you a ton with that. Now in terms of the XP farming methods, I do want to talk about these a bit because there are 2 really good ones right now getting some traction, and I've used these also to boost some of my alts, not just my main. So the first one is Champion's Demise, as we've talked about this in a previous video. This was one of my favorites before because it does let you level up to 75 fairly easily. It's about 1 million per run in terms of XP, give or take, and it takes roughly 2 to 5 minutes tops depending on how good your build is to complete it. However, there's one just as great, if not even better, due to the much less time needed to travel. So that's going to be the Ruins of Eridu, which is a dungeon you can find right here in Hauser down south. So this is a rather simple layout instance with just 2 adjacent paths on each side that it completely fills with a lot of elites. Not only are there groups of elites, but more elites also spawn when you defeat the previous ones. I went ahead and compared this to the Champion's Demise, and doing similar runs, this one actually came in slightly on top in terms of XP and time completion, around 900k compared to just 850, without of course finishing the main boss, which would have added to it a little bit more. But the ruins were about 1 or 2 minutes faster given how the instance is smaller in size and the layout is much, well, better in this case in my opinion. There's minimal backtracking here compared to the other zones, so that's what makes it so good. Now this was, by the way, all tested on world tier 4, so without triggering any XP buffs, without any group buffs, or having it as a nightmare dungeon and 10 enemy levels higher, which if it were the case would have given a significant more XP boost than not having it at all. So that's 1 million by default. It's obviously going to be much higher if you run all of these boosts on top of each other. Big disclaimer, I haven't tested this on anything below Torment, so it might be different there, but in Torment difficulty, it's going to give you all these mobs and all these specs, which makes it much faster. But as it happens, I also enjoy leveling alts and trying out other classes, so here are a few ways you can do all of that, some of which can literally power level your alt from 1 to 50 in just a few hours. Obviously, you will need your main here to have completed the most important and crucial aspects, including the main story, map completion, and also some of the Codex of Powers. That's because your alt, if you create it after beating the main campaign, it actually gives you the option to now completely skip the main story and run straight into the end game. You will still be level 1 and have no gear on this new character, but you will get access to all, and I'd say much better, Tree of Whisper events. These are so great in fact that you can exclusively farm them and gain tons of extra XP, plus a ton of the loot that you get from the caches that are rewarded to you. But you'll also start with the horse already unlocked since level 1, which will make map travel faster. It just sucks that you have to discover it again on your alt character, but if you've unlocked all the main towns on your main character, you will get all of these travel points for all the future characters on that account, so map discovery becomes a lot easier because of it. And speaking of map discovery, there are 2 more things you'll want to prepare in advance before you want to jump into a second character. One is to complete at least 3 starting region progress challenges for each of the zones so that you can get the 10 extra skill points. These will help a ton on a character just starting out because you can essentially act as a level 10 character right from level 1, basically investing all those skill points and getting a build going right after. The other thing is that the Codex of Power, and hopefully you already unlocked most of it, if not all of it, this will help you immediately transition into a build if you got the powers starting up for this class. And that's because it literally just takes 10 minutes to reach level 20, and with the Tree of Whispers you get so many rares, you can just bump them to legendary quality in just a few minutes. Obviously, it goes without saying you should always use tier 1 adventure difficulty if you're leveling up solo, since this significantly cuts down the time needed to clear out enemies and especially bosses. Like literally levels will come at you so fast you won't even feel the 25% difference in XP buffs. There is, however, 1 or 2 more things actually that you can do if you want to truly power level, but I only recommend doing this once you kinda got the grip of the game and got used to certain classes and maybe even played with it a bit so that you don't feel completely detached from it. And that is actually, yes, to get help from a friend. It actually does help a ton with that, and I did help and both got help from my friends in power leveling some of my other classes. One of them is you can power level a low level character through both of these dungeons I just talked about, even on World Tier 2, and basically get some nice XP since your high level character can obviously just destroy them much faster. Second of all, once that alt reaches level 50, and this is what I also did for my friends, was to clear the capstone dungeons for World Tier 3 and Tier 4, so Nightmare and Torment, as soon as they hit that cap. This way, I can just carry them with me in those dungeons and just clear them up as usual because they are easy for me, but for them it helps them with a significant bump, since then we can jump straight into Tier 4 and do the previous 2 dungeons we talked about on Tier 4 and gain the 200% extra XP boost and get them even faster and closer to level 100 from that point on. But this is pretty much it with the video. Thanks much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.